I have a confession to make. This episode almost didn't happen. And it almost didn't happen because of my own kind of judgment and closed-mindedness. And I am so glad it happened to teach me otherwise. This episode is with George Kamel. And if you don't know him, he is a Dave Ramsey personality. He actually started out as one of the hosts for his radio show in the lobby. And turns out we actually met a couple years ago when I did my own Dave Ramsey Scream back in 2018. And why I say this episode almost didn't happen is that when we got the request to join our podcast as a guest, my first thought was, well, this podcast is for women and this podcast is for people who are reaching financial independence, not just paying down debt. And Dave Ramsey has been saying some stuff that I don't necessarily agree with. And so is he a good fit for this podcast? And then Steph and I had a great conversation and we said, you know what? There can be some things that we can learn. We haven't really known much about him, and maybe we will find out some things that we really do enjoy about this person. And also maybe we can find some common ground. And it turns out all of those were true. And George is such a lovely person. And I'm really, really glad that he came on the podcast because it reminded me that yes, while Steph and I are focused particularly on women and reaching financial independence and specifically look through the lens as women of color, it is also important to note that we can learn a lot of things from people who don't look like us, who maybe come from different backgrounds. And turns out we have a lot more in common than we expected. And so if you're someone who is in that phase of trying to figure out how to pay down debt, trying to figure out how you want to move on with the next phases of your life, but you want to get your personal finances in order, I would love for you to listen to this episode. So let's dig in.
Welcome to Crush Your Money Goals, where we dive deep into all things money as your two millionaire mentors. I'm Bernadette Joy.
And I'm Stefanie Gonzalez. This season, we're shifting gears and focusing on something that affects us all, quitting with confidence.
From financial habits to career transitions, we're here to guide you through the journey of taking charge of your finances and pursuing your dreams fearlessly.
Tune in every week as we share tips, stories, and expert insights to help you crush your money goals and embrace change with open arms. Welcome to Season 7, Quit with Conviction.
All right, welcome back, y'all. This is Bernadette and Steph and our wonderful guest, George. And we are here today to talk about all things related to quitting forward and successfully. And we are so excited for his perspective. Welcome to the show.
It's so fun to be here. You guys are incredible.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah.
We have three y'all splaining millionaires on this podcast.
Oh, that's so good. You need to TM that, like patent it, whatever you got to do.
Y'all splaining. And we definitely need to trademark that for sure. So I would love for you to introduce yourself, George, to the audience if people don't know who you are.
Absolutely. So I've been on the Ramsey team now for 11 years. I started as an intern and worked about 6 jobs in this one company over those 11 years. And the last few years, I've gotten to teach and speak and tell people that there's a different way to handle money. And that was my story. When I started here at 23, I was $40,000 in debt. I had the credit cards. I had the student loans. I was frustrated. I was cynical. I was anxious. Pretty much your typical millennial. And things changed once I started working for this guy named Dave Ramsey. I went through Financial Peace University. I cut up my credit cards. I got out of debt in 18 months, met my wife here. She's much smarter than me, better looking and better with money. And so we ended up in our early 30s. We fast forward 10 years into the journey and we have a paid for house and we are what we call baby steps millionaires. We had a net worth for our household of over $1 million. And I came from immigrant parents, didn't come from much, very middle class. And I want to shout from the rooftops that it's possible to change your financial future, regardless of where you are today and regardless of where you came from.
Love that.
I love that. A side note. So we tend to meander the show. How did you meet your wife at the...
First, I always tell people, like, don't date a coworker unless you plan on marrying them, because it can get really awkward. But I was also like, Dave's hiring process is so intense that if you make it through that, you must be such a quality person that, like, if you're good enough for Dave, you're good enough for me. And so that was sort of my standard. And I guess I was just charming enough to convince her to go on the first date. And that first date turned into a second, and a third. And here we are today. We've got our first baby, a 6-month-old named Mia, and 2 French bulldogs.
Wow.
And it's just a party.
Congrats.
It's a party at the Kamel house now.
A party at the Kamel house. I love that. And so it looks like you got more than just a job out of going to your current employer here. And
if nothing else, I got a wife.
If nothing else, you got a wife. And so you mentioned, being the son of immigrant parents. So as a first generation wealth builder, what ideas about money did you have to quit? This is what the show is about. This season is about, things that you have to quit in order to reach financial independence. And so you mentioned immigrant parents. I'm sure there are ideas or beliefs or kind of generational things that were passed on to you.
Yeah. So my dad immigrated from Egypt. My mom immigrated from Syria. They met in Texas at an Arabic Baptist church in Houston. So if it doesn't get more Southern than that. And so that was my upbringing. It was this weird, like Arabic Baptist Southern, but then when I lived in Boston and that's where I grew up. And so it was a wild time. But, the work ethic of any immigrant is they will outwork anybody. And so that's what I grew up learning. And I also grew up learning frugality, which is great. The part I had to unlearn was the assimilation to this toxic money culture. When you move to America, they might as well just slap your, the green card with a credit card and go, all right, time to build your credit. What do I got to do to build credit? Well, you have to go into debt continually for a long time and good luck. And that's kind of what happened with my family. I learned that, it was all about negotiating a good monthly payment versus being able to afford things in full. And that's the way I learned things growing up. I learned that debt is a tool that you should leverage and that your credit score ultimately will dictate your financial success. So those were a lot of things I had to unlearn, that debt is not a tool. Debt is a thief that steals from my paycheck and my income and my joy. And the credit score is all about debt management, not money management. So those are 2 really big things I had to learn. And one of the other ones was you'll never be a millionaire because everyone on my street, unless you grew up rich, you didn't get to become rich. And that was a really difficult thing for me to wrap my head around. My parents, they didn't come from a lot of money. We didn't have a whole lot of money. And so in my mind, I'm going to be like my parents when I grow up. Maybe slightly, as a little bit better. That's always the goal of any parent, is to raise kids that have a life a little bit better than they did. But I never, when I pictured a millionaire, imagined myself. Because the picture I had in my mind was a very toxic, false, mythical picture of what a millionaire looked like. And the last one I had to unlearn was that I thought budgeting was for accountants and money nerds. And what I had to realize was that budgeting is for people who are intentional with their money, who want to happen to it. And so all of those things, relearning that debt is not a tool, that the credit score is ultimately a real bad scoreboard of how you're doing financially, that you can become a millionaire, and a part of it is belief in your own financial destiny. And lastly, that budgeting is for people who want to win with money. And once you can unlearn those things and learn the good stuff, it is amazing how much confidence and peace you'll have.
I mean, it definitely sounds like you learned all these things, but I assume it was over time and with a lot of introspection and maybe even making mistakes along the way. As a first generation wealth builder, and now even having the wealth that you have now, what has been the hardest part going from one side to the other? Because I have a perspective on this for myself, right? And thinking about I'm a millionaire. How do I say this? How do I even show up?
Oh, it's awkward.
Yeah. So what's the hardest part about that for you?
Oh, the hardest part, I think, is trading in this kind of YOLO FOMO mentality, which is so natural to have. Because we want to enjoy life. We've seen our parents work their whole life just to have maybe kind of a sad retirement later on at 65. And that is our worst nightmare as a younger generation. We want to enjoy life now. We want to travel. We want to have these experiences. We want to have the stuff while we're young enough to enjoy it and able to do it. And so the thing I had to trade in that was really hard was FOMO for what I call JOMO, the joy of missing out. And there's this amazing thing when you run the race set before you that you set for yourself that is not influenced by how your friends are doing or what your socioeconomic scale your parents are at. You get so much confidence and peace in the journey because nothing can distract you. Nothing can throw you off when you know you're doing what's right for you and your family. And the problem a lot of people have is they try to run other people's race. And the huge problem there is there's no finish line. When you run someone else's race, you're always trying to keep up. You're always trying to upgrade your lifestyle a little bit more. And especially for women out there, the social and relational pressures are so real to have to say yes, to go, yes, absolutely, I'll go on the trip. Yes, let's go out this weekend. And so just having the boundaries to say no is a huge part of JOMO, but it's what absolutely led me to build wealth at an accelerated pace.
Wow.
I'd love to hear, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear, like, you know, with you and your friends, right? This is a conversation that comes up a lot for Steph and I have talked about this. I've talked about this with my friends who millennial here as well. I like to say older millennial.
Elder millennial, yes.
Yeah, we are elder millennials.
The best
here.
kind.
We're the elder millennials. When I was going through my own debt-free journey, I definitely had a challenge of that FOMO versus JOMO, and even explaining to my friends what it was I was trying to do because debt was so normalized. So what kind of conversations did you have to have with your friends while you're paying off this $40,000 of debt that you mentioned earlier?
Well, the beautiful thing is when you are young and broke and single, it's the best time to just say, hi, I'm broke. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, me too. And so it's a really easy time when you're 23 to go like, hey, I can't do that thing. I'm out of college. I have student loans. I just got my big boy job. I'm trying to really build a financial foundation. I think friends are more understanding at that stage of life. But also, if they're not, it might be time to find new friends because the friends that you dragged along from high school or college may not be the people who are going to take you to where you want to go. Like if they're not on board, you need to get rid of them. Like they just don't get it. This is truly just, I need to surround myself with people who are a positive influence in my life, who understand and have empathy for my money goals. And if they're going to try to tempt me and drag me off the wagon every 3 seconds, then I need to be around different people for this season. And that's a hard thing to do, to set those boundaries and to tell someone, hey, I can't be a part of your life right now. But you have to also think bigger than just appeasing friends that could be dragging you back financially. So what I found is I admire the people that inspire me. Those are the people I want to be around, not the people who are a part of my past. And those people have come and gone. And that's okay. We text a few times a year. We can still be buddies. But the people you need in your corner are those folks that are going to keep you accountable and go like, hey, maybe let's skip the fancy lattes and let's just hang at your place. And those are the ones you want to keep around because you'll actually hit your money goals together. And so find those people and cherish them.
Ta-da! If you like this content, please go ahead and check out my latest project. It's the Crush Your Money Goals book, and it will be available for purchase December, but now you can get it for pre-order and you can learn the 25 money habits that will help you save, invest, and plan for financial freedom the same way that I did and was able to retire by 40. Check it out at crushyourmoneygoals.com.
You know, one interesting thing about your story that I feel like people ask me a lot of questions about is you've grown your career at one company, or a large part of your career at one company. What has been your mindset going into that? Whether it's, you know, this was something you always wanted to do or not, but how have you thought about your career and what you're putting into this and the advancement of it? What's your recipe for success in your mind?
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, I truly think my career journey is way more impressive than anything I've done financially. To go from being an intern for a Ramsey personality to now being a Ramsey personality still is so humbling in my mind. And it's something I didn't come here to Ramsey thinking, well, I want to be a personality, so I'll just do whatever it takes to get there. I didn't even think it was in the cards for me. I was just happy to be a marketing guy and do social media and email. And so on the career side, I always joke that I have a Guinness World Record for longest held career by a millennial at one place because I've been here 11 years. Now, I've had 6 jobs here, but a lot of the mentality I've seen out there, and some of it works, is you got to job hop. If you're not job hopping every 1 or 2 years, then you're missing out on raises. And it's a very just like this aggressive boss babe mentality of like, get paid what you're worth. And truthfully, there are a lot of people who are not getting paid what they're worth. And it may be time to jump ship and go to that next company. But I also think there's such value in planting deep roots in one place and growing there. If you look at a lot of leaders out there, they started from the mailroom and now they're a VP in the company. And there's beauty in plugging those roots in and just being faithful in what's in front of you. And that's exactly what I did. Job after job here, from intern to social media to email marketing coordinator, back to social media, to all of these different roles, to host an MC for live events and the live streams we did, to now personality. you just had to be faithful in what was in front of you and not get too eager and too, you don't want to be too much of a squeaky wheel. You want to be a team player and go like, all right, I'm going to do what's in front of me and I'm going to get a little more rope because I'm going to crush this opportunity with everything I have in me. And people notice that over time. And I truly think that's what led me here. It was being the most prepared guy in the room because I knew I wasn't the smartest. And I know and this wasn't like working 80 hours a week. There's this also toxic mentality that like we work 8 to 5 and then Dave yells at us and says, go home. What are you still doing here? Go be with your family. And so if you're not at a company that respects your time and boundaries that way, it also might be time to leave. But luckily, we've got a great culture here, great leadership at Ramsey. And I'm a lifer here, as we call it. And it's been a wild journey. And I encourage people to just be faithful in what's in front of you and know that it may take longer and it's going to be frustrating and it's going to do a huge zigzag. And it's not going to be the straight linear line of I moved up in the corporate ladder. It's going to look different and you need to be okay with that.
Yeah, the zigzag is real for sure.
The zig is real.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Bernadette.
I was going to say, I envy you in that regard, in that I quit many jobs over the course of my similar time span. And so the fact that you were able to move within different jobs in the same company is absolutely great. I want to shift gears into that beautiful orange rectangle behind you, that book you have that's coming out, Breaking Free from Broke. Can you give us a little synopsis of what the book is about?
Yes, we just launched this in January, and it was a labor of love over my decade here at Ramsey going, how do I translate all of the money principles that have worked for 30 years and make them relevant for the year of our Lord 2024, so that the person reading it, whether they're 22 or 52, goes, oh, finally, a book that I can understand by someone who actually gets what I'm experiencing and that gives me hope on the other side. And so I wrote this book, Breaking Free from Broke, to help people break free from broke, from this toxic money culture that I talked about. And I walk through every single part of the system. I call it the system and how we need to bucket, because it's meant to keep us broke. When you look at credit scores, why they started, why they exist today, what they've done to us, credit cards, which we're now in over $1 trillion, record highs in credit card debt, the student loan debacle, $1.7 trillion floating out there with everyone hoping for forgiveness from the next politician, car loans, which are now almost surpassing student loans, which is so wild to me because we're stuck with these car payments because we believe it's the only way. And then I even go into investing traps and mortgages and what you need to know about all of that. And then by about 2/3 of the book, I show you how to break free from all of that and live a life with more freedom, more margin, more options, and more joy. And that looks a whole lot like the Ramsey plan. I talk about how budgeting is freedom and spending is self-control and margin is breathing room and savings is peace and wealth is patience and generosity is joy. And all of this leads to a more meaningful life. I think we need to talk about money so that we can stop talking about money. Because usually when we do, it's negative and it's complaining. And instead, I want us to talk about the people that we want to become, the families that we want to be a part of, the places we want to travel to, and money then is just an obstacle holding us back. And so I want people to see money as a tool to help them live their best life instead of live this life they're exhausted by. And so that's the synopsis of the book. It's called Breaking Free from Broke, and you guys can pick it up if you want to at RamseySolutions.com or wherever you get books.
You know, this podcast and the work that Bernadette and I do is very centered around women, right? And money, managing your money, getting in the driver's seat of that gives you a lot of choices, right? But if you were to give a woman advice based on your book and the philosophy, right, that you surround yourself with, if they were trying to quit a toxic situation, you call it work, relationship, whatever, what is it that you would tell her?
Well, this largely comes down to boundaries. It's far less of a financial issue, and it's a lot of just being assertive in your boundaries and being okay to say no, whatever the situation is, and whoever is treating you that certain way, you have to be able to exit that situation in a graceful way and sometimes in a less graceful way, depending on how bad it really is. And we've taken calls on the Ramsey show where women are being abused, whether it's verbally, financially, where they say, well, he handles, he handles the finances. I don't really get involved. That is a frightening sentence to me, because that is not a picture of a healthy marriage. That is a picture of someone who is being financially abused in a very controlling situation. And so I tell them, you have to have accountability and transparency in a marriage. There is no trust right now. You don't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what you're doing. And that's why we tell people, combine bank accounts. I know it's scary for a lot of people, and there's situations where we say that's not a good idea if there's been some financial trauma and addiction and spending issues. But for a lot of people that are in a relationship of that kind, number one, don't combine bank accounts and money until you're married. Because we also see a ton of awful things happen. Well, I co-signed the loan for him, and then we broke up, and now I'm stuck with his loan. Those are real situations. And so don't get yourself tied up in that, whether it's a car loan or even a mortgage or a house. And then the other thing you need to do when it comes to quitting that toxic situation is realizing that you have more agency and autonomy over your life than you think. And unfortunately, because of the way society has pressured women into trying to be submissive, they go, well, it's not really fully in my control. And the women that inspire me, the women that are going to build wealth, regardless of what happens to them, are the ones that go, no, I have a say in this. I have control over a few things in this situation, namely how I react, how I respond, my habits, my behaviors. And some of the most inspiring calls on the Ramsey Show are those women who overcame the odds, who overcame the toxic situation, the single mom who's able to become a millionaire and get her kids to college debt free. Those are the ones that bring tears to our eyes. And so I want to just tell all the women out there that I totally understand the pressures are very real. They're different from the pressures on men. And there still is a lot of, inequality, and there's still justice to be had when it comes to women and finances and career. But the one thing you can do is advocate for yourself and get that financial literacy. This is not a man's game. Wall Street might be filled with a bunch of white guys, but it doesn't mean that you can't build wealth for your family regardless of that all. And that's what we teach in Financial Peace University. We are not a company that's built to serve one type of person. We want to serve everyone in all walks of life.
I love that. I think it was the end of your book where you navigate this discussion around cynicism and hope. And kind of you even navigated between those two. Can you explain that to everyone? Because I think what you discussed there in the sense of a woman, right? I saw that, but I think that also applies to first generation wealth builders, diverse communities, the whole thing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I tried to go first and go I don't want this book to feel like I'm talking down to you. This is a book that was written from the heart where I go, I'm a recovering cynic. I was that guy. Some days I wake up and I still am that guy who's very cynical toward the world. And usually that's because I read one too many headlines, or, you have the wrong inputs and you're seeing the wrong stuff on social media where I'm like, why am I following this guy? Or why is the algorithm serving me up the most frustrating financial content where I want to rip out my hair? And so a lot of it does come down to your inputs when it comes to hope versus cynicism. And it's a daily choice. I know that I'm not this the power of positive thinking guy. I'm too logical for my own good. And therefore hope is this elusive thing where I'm like, well, that's cute if you're Tony Robbins, but I got to wake up and go to work. And so the one thing I realized was that hope is a daily choice I have to make, like brushing my teeth, like taking a shower. I have to believe that today's going to be a good day where I'm going to build wealth. I'm the kind of person who takes control of my money. I'm the kind of person who has self-control, who invests every single month. And once you have those identity-based goals and you see progress over time, which is what we call the 7 baby steps that we teach, it's amazing how hope starts to trickle in and starts to grab a hold of you, and it starts to change you. And that's why I ended the book with a chapter on generosity is joy. Because I truly believe it's the antidote to so much. If we can just be more open-handed with our life, with our time, with our money, with our resources, it will lead to more joy. And I believe more can flow to those hands when they're wide open versus clenched and tight and cynical and Scrooge McDucked through life. It's just not a fun way to live. And so I have to fight that cynicism every day. But I end the book saying, I hope you choose hope, that it's not too late for you. If you're that 55-year-old person listening and you're like, well, if I knew this stuff 30 years ago, well, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And so I remind people, what are you doing today? And I also say this, it's not all your fault, but it's your responsibility for where you are today. I want to acknowledge that it's not all of our decisions. Yes, some of it was my stupid behavior, but a lot of things did happen to us, and there was family trauma, and there was abuse, and there is baggage. But we have to go, what can I do about that? What can I do next so that I can rise above this toxic system and build wealth and live that life I want?
Attention ladies, want to be a debt-free millionaire? I'm your co-host Stefanie, and I'm here to help you activate your hard-earned income and achieve financial independence. For being a Crush Your Money Goals listener, I invite you to book your free personal one-on-one consultation with me today and get started on your wealth building journey. Visit www.womenswealtheffect.com/free. That's www.womenswealtheffect.com/free and take control of your financial future. Don't wait.
Love that. Love that. As you think about your now growing family and doing the work that you do, Bernadette and I kind of grapple with this a lot. Like we're all debt-free millionaires, right? And we are building our businesses and we have ideas of what we want to accomplish. And of course, financial goals that are behind that. In your mind, how much is enough? What is your goal?
Oh, this is a real question, and I am in this season hardcore. My wife and I were just having this discussion about, do we upgrade in-house? There's some new neighborhoods, and we could build this massive house. And I'm like, well, we have 2 French bulldogs and a baby. We don't exactly need a McMansion at this point. And so we actually ended that conversation going, we have enough. Like, we have enough bedrooms. There's enough square footage. There's always this idea, especially in America, of, well, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And for people like us who are very driven, it's healthy to always have a goal in front of you. Otherwise, if you're like me, you get lazy and comfortable and, eat one too many gluten-free Oreos. And I've been there. And so we love having that goal, that carrot to dangle in front of us going, okay, what's the next thing? And so for us, it was, we paid off the house. All right, now I'm going to upgrade my car. Okay, now we're going to upgrade her car. Okay, we got the house. We got this. We have the baby. Let's get the college fund going. Okay, now can we retire early? Can we upgrade in house? And we've had to learn that contentment it's a moving goalpost if you're not careful. And so we've had to really plant roots and go, what does enough mean for us? And now that we have a baby, I think it changes things once you start a family, because when you look in the eyes of that little girl of just pure joy and innocence, you're like, oh, this is my new enough. It's not about the next thing and the next financial goal. It's about being present. And so what I've realized is the best version of enough is being present in the moment instead of living in the past or trying to achieve some goal in the future. And that to me is the largest struggle. If you guys have any tips for that, please tell me, because I struggle with just being present. I'm always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing?
Yeah, you and my husband can talk about that. He was literally talking to me the other day about, now in his mind, his motivation is the 2 boys that we have, right? And what we want to ultimately help and support them in, not only financially, but just the skills that we give them to navigate the world in front of us, because it's a very different world than we grew up in.
That's a challenge on its own. But doing it debt-free, and you guys know this, it's such a different way to live. Like, yes, it's not like money is never going to become a thought anymore, but it definitely takes the stress away. It just becomes, it's a light challenge versus a conundrum where it's a crisis. And so that's what being debt-free does for people. It gives them peace and margin and options. You can live where you want to live, work where you want to work, raise your family how you want to. We want to go to private school, we're going to send them to private school because we have the margin to do that. And it just allows you more options.
Absolutely.
It just popped in my head. So I actually did my debt-free stream in Nashville back in 2018. I think it was now. It sounds crazy. And I just remembered you were in the lobby.
Was I in the lobby doing the host interviews?
I thought he was going to say bringing you coffee, but that's not.
We need to find that footage.
I want to say that you were in the lobby when I was doing that, and so seeing you progress from there to now be to be a Dave Ramsey personality is so amazing, and so I congratulate you on that lifetime kind of achievement. But
thank you.
I don't know why it just occurred to me now. It's just like, wait a minute. I think I've actually seen you in person.
You had this like Chris Nolan flashback just now. It's amazing. Really took you back.
For the YouTube video, I'll put a little kind of thing here. But for someone who doesn't have that life or maybe job right now, an opportunity to be able to kind of put forward is around side hustling. And I heard that y'all have a new quiz that is available for people to check out side hustles.
Absolutely. It's one of the biggest questions we get because as I talk about how to create financial margin to get rid of debt, to invest more, whatever, save the down payment, it all comes down to margin. And there's only two ways to do it: spend less and make more. And I talk a whole lot about how to spend less, getting on a budget, cutting the subscriptions, all of that, lowering your lifestyle. But the make more side, a lot of people are going, when do I quit my full-time job? How do I approach that side hustle? So we created a totally free side hustle quiz at georgekamel.com. That's Kamel, georgekamel.com/side hustle. And this will help people navigate that and kind of put them into the quadrant of, hey, do I have a lot of time and high skill? Do I not have a lot of time and low skill? Then it helps them figure out what side hustle could be next for them. And I just want to encourage people with it and go, there's so much opportunity out there. There are people starting businesses every day, and it would blow your mind how strange. And you're like, people like make widgets for this thing that go into this part. Yes. And they make millions of dollars doing it. And so whether you start small or you want to go big, this will help you sort of figure out what's next for you. And it's part of my journey. And that's why I'm passionate about it. I didn't just wait for Dave to give me a raise. I couldn't fast forward my career when I was starting. And so I had to go out and make $10,000, $20,000 extra a year to hit my aggressive financial goals. And through consulting and marketing and Ubering and lifting and building websites and doing music, all of the skills that you already have can be making you money on the side without some like TikTok scam where you have to buy a course. So go check it out, georgekamel.com/side hustle.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I want to end with this thought because I know that there are some people in the personal finance world that might say that the baby steps are kind of older or outdated or feel like they might not be into modern times. And it seems like, and it feels like with your book and with your philosophies that you've really brought some of these things into the modern world. So what would you say has been the evolution of the baby steps and how can that apply to people today in today's world?
Well, half the reason I wrote the book was to address every single one of those objections. I promise I get to it before your brain can even get there when you're reading. Like, oh, dang it, he covered that too. And so that was part of the goal. But what I've seen is that the people that want to have the objections, either they're like crazy money nerds they're like, all right, I've graduated, I don't need this. And they just want to argue for fun on the internet. But there's people I got to help out there. There's people who actually want to grow and don't know the right principles. And for those people, I would say the baby steps still work. And this is not a theory. It's not out of sheer grit that we stick to it. It's because we continually see it working. We continually see people on the debt-free stage in their 20s now, in their 30s, who just got a handle on this stuff earlier. And so the principles underneath the baby steps will work through the end of time because they came from the beginning of time. This is based on biblical principles of the borrower is slave to the lender. So let's get out of debt and stay out of debt. That's going to help us keep more of our greatest wealth building tool, our income. Hey, maybe we should live on less than we make. That way we never outspend our income and need to go into debt. Those are some basic principles. Budget for the future. Make a plan for where your money's going to go instead of wondering where it went. And invest for the future consistently, and you will build wealth. And so these are not like mind-blowing principles. And the way we lay them out in a strategic order is what causes people to win. Because as we take calls on the Ramsey Show, a lot of people are doing a lot of good things at once. They're trying to pay off debt, but they're also trying to get the emergency fund, but they're also trying to save for a down payment, and they also want to invest for the future. All wonderful things, but there is an order to it that will help you build wealth faster with more peace and confidence. And so I tell people, read the book, and then we can argue about it after that when you have your book report.
I love that. I love that I love that rather than having that cynicism that you're giving people the opportunity to get informed about it and then have a conversation about it, right? And so I think that's really wonderful. It has been so fun to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for your time. Is there any last words that you want to share with our audience?
Oh, you guys are just so good at this. I just wish we could all hang out. So if you're ever in Nashville, or if any of your listeners are in Nashville, come by and see us at the Ramsey headquarters. You can watch the show live. We'll feed you baked goods and free lattes and all that stuff.
That's true. I know that personally.
You'll be surprised at how much Bernadette and I see each other in person. So if we do that, we will hold you to it.
Please. Well, recreate your Bernadette's debt-free scream, and I'll hold the mic in front of her and interview her. It'll be a blast. That's awesome. So fun. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'd love to connect with people listening as well. If they want to reach out at George Kamel with a K on Instagram or catch me on YouTube, all of that stuff. We're always wanting to engage with our peoples.
Thanks for being here. We will talk to you soon.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Crush Your Money Goals podcast.
Please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to this podcast. Your feedback helps us spread the wealth of knowledge to more women like you.
And if you'd like to work with me to help you answer the important question, if I'm on track to retire, be sure to snag my free financial independence planner at womenswealtheffect.com/planner.
And if you'd like to work with me to kickstart your financial freedom plan, you can grab the Cha-Ching Checklist, my free guide at crushyourmoneygoals.com/free guide.
See you next time.